Recording in progress.
Welcome to the City Council regular meeting this Monday evening, March 17th. Happy St. Patrick's Day. I now call this meeting to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Certainly, Mayor Newsom. Councilmember Diaz-Nash.
Present.
Councilmember Svirko-Goditsky.
Here.
Councilmember Fernandez.
Am I AI? I'm here. Yes.
Deputy Mayor Lorraine.
Here.
Mayor Newsom.
Here. Excuse me. We are excited to be here in person with options for those who choose not to be in person to participate virtually. There are several ways to participate. For those attending in person, please complete a request to speak slip and hand it to the city clerk. If participating remotely, please raise your hand in the feature, use the raise your hand feature in Zoom, and you will be called on at the appropriate time. If calling in via phone, press *9 and raise your hand, and when called upon, press *6 to unmute. These options for public comment will remain available until I close the public comment period for each specific item. Our first item tonight is a ceremonial one. It's Multiple Sclerosis Awareness Month proclamation. And we ask Linda Glassel, who's attending virtually, to join us. Linda's from the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. She's the president of the Northern California chapter. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you so much.
Before we start, I'm going to read a proclamation. Whereas multiple sclerosis, MS, is a neurological disease of the central nervous system affecting at least 2.3 million people worldwide. And whereas the National Multiple Sclerosis Society is the largest MS organization in the world with over 8.6 million people engaging with the society each year. And whereas the National Multiple Sclerosis Society Northern California chapter has been committed for more than 72 years to creating a world free of MS, heightening public knowledge about and insight into the disease while mobilizing people and resources so that everyone affected by MS can live their best lives as we stop MS in its tracks, restore what has been lost, and end the MS forever. And whereas since 1946, the National Multiple Sclerosis Society has been driving the force of MS research, relentlessly pursuing prevention, treatment, and a cure, and has raised more than $1 billion invested in groundbreaking research. And whereas funds raised annually through the National Multiple Sclerosis Society fuel the efforts of research projects globally at the best medical centers, universities, and other institutions throughout the United States and abroad. As of October of 2024, California receives funding for 24 current research projects aiming to bring awareness to MS. And whereas discovering the cause, finding a cure, and preventing future generations from being diagnosed with MS is an important task that all Americans in California should support. And whereas the city of San Mateo recognizes the importance of finding a cause of the cure of MS, a chronic and often devastating disease, and expresses its appreciation and admiration for the dedication of the National Multiple Sclerosis Society Northern California chapter has shown toward a future free of MS. Now, therefore, I, Robert Newsom, Mayor of City of San Mateo, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim March 2025 as MS Awareness Month, and do commend this observation to all of our citizens. I encourage all Californians to learn more about multiple sclerosis and what they can do to support individuals with MS and their families. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I'm a San Mateo resident and appreciate the support.
And Linda, would you like to say anything before we? Okay, I opened it up to you.
Absolutely. So thank you again. The National MS Society has been around for over 75 years. And as the mayor said, we've raised over $1 billion that is helping to find a cure for MS. We're closer than ever. And in Northern California, with institutions like UCSF, Stanford, so much of those dollars come back here. So we appreciate everyone's support, appreciate the proclamation, and this is MS Awareness Month, and we will continue to find a cure for MS.
Thank you very much, Linda, and I hope your organization keeps up the great work. Thank you. Okay. Moving along, next up is our consent calendar. City Clerk, would you please read the consent calendar?
With pleasure, Mayor Newsom. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered by the council to be routine and will be enacted by one motion without discussion. If discussion is desired, that item may be removed and considered separately. Item number 2, City Council 2025 regular meeting calendar adoption. Item number 3, Sister City Policy adoption. Item number 4, City Clerk's Office Assistant to the City Clerk position reallocation. Item number 5, Citywide Small Trash Capture Project Amendment. Item number 6, Central Park Playground Improvement Project Contract. Item number 7, AB 481 Annual Military Equipment Report Approval. Item number 8, 385 Second Avenue Lease Agreement Renewal. Item number 9, Metropolitan Transportation Commission Transit-Oriented Communities Policy Grant Agreement. And finally, item number 10, Fourth and Railroad Parking Lot Bespoke Development Exclusive Negotiation Agreement Extension.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Is there any member of the council who would like to pull an item from the consent calendar? Seeing none, if any members of the public who wish to comment on any consent calendar item, now would be the time to make your comment. This is for consent calendar items only. Mr. Clerk, are there requests for public comment?
No comments, no request to speak in chamber, and I have no hands raised in Zoom.
All right. Well, then I will ask my council, is there a motion for council to approve the consent calendar?
I motion to approve.
I second.
Mr. Clerk, would you please call roll?
Certainly, Mayor Newsom. Councilmember Svirko-Gaditsky,
Yes.
Councilmember Diaz-Nash,
Yes.
Councilmember Fernandez.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Lorraine,
Yes.
Mayor Newsom.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Through
Thank
the
you.
mayor,
Yes,
could
ma'am.
I make a quick comment about one of the items?
Of course.
I'd like to talk to item number 3, the Sister City Policy. This was something that has been on our blue sky strategic objectives. And I would just like to commend the city clerk's office for doing this because we all hold the relationship we have with Toyonaka in tremendous esteem. And it's been going for 60 years now or 61?
61 years.
Yeah, but this really puts it on a firm foundation, and I'm very excited and very grateful. So thank you to all of you for doing that. And Mayor Newsom, when you go over there this summer, please make sure to share that because this is great.
Absolutely.
And then the other item, number 9, the MTC Transit Oriented Communities Policy Grant. Just want everybody in the community to know this is cause for celebration. This is a $610,000 grant that we are going to use, or our community development department is going to use to really undertake the comprehensive zoning update. That is what is going to really take our general plan and put it into reality. So this is smart use of city resources to go after even more money, and we should do a lot more of it, City Manager. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lisa. Next on the agenda is public comment. Members of the public wishing to comment on any item not appearing on the agenda may address the City Council at this time. State law prevents council from taking action on any matter not on the agenda. Your comments may be referred to staff for follow-up. This public comment section is generally limited to a total of 15 minutes. However, that is subject to council's discretion and can be extended if council wishes to do so. If needed, an opportunity for additional public comment may be available later in the agenda. City Clerk, please tally the total number of requests to speak on general public comment.
Certainly, Mayor Newsom. We'll give folks in our virtual environment just a few moments to raise your hands. If you wish to speak on general public comment and have not provided me with the request to speak slip, please do so now. So we'll give you just a few more moments. Understood. Thank you. In total, we have 7 requests to speak. So per council adopted rules and procedures, that would be 3 minutes per speaker. So we will take our in-person speakers first. I will announce that the final speaker on tonight's meeting will be Mahir Patel. Mahir Patel, you will be our final speaker in our virtual environment. Our first speaker in chambers will be Michael Sevilla. Michael, if you could please come up to and Michael will be followed by our next speaker.
Thank you. Welcome.
Dear San Mateo City Council, I am before you again regarding the detrimental impact of the 14-day advanced reservation window for VIP members at San Mateo Municipal Golf Course, known as Poplar Creek. As a San Mateo resident and resident card holder, I, along with 100 other residents and others who have signed my petition, urge the immediate termination of this program. Since its implementation in July 2021, the VIP program has consistently disadvantaged San Mateo residents, effectively denying them access to their own municipal golf course, especially on weekends. The core issues are as follows. Resident displacement. The 14-day window allows VIP members to book prime tee times, often before resident card holders even have access. This effectively shuts out residents from using their own municipal facility, particularly during peak weekend hours. Almost all tee times before 2 p.m. on weekends are routinely booked by VIPs, leaving residents with virtually no opportunity to play. Abuse and no-shows. A significant number of tee times reserved by VIP members go unused. These no-shows and short shows result in lost revenue, as these slots could have been filled up by residents or other golfers. Relying on last-minute bookings and walk-ups to compensate for VIP no-shows is not a responsible or resident-focused management strategy. Unfair advantage. Unlike neighboring municipal golf courses, San Mateo offers this exclusive advanced booking window to non-residents. This preferential treatment is unwarranted and directly contradicts the purpose of a municipal facility, which should prioritize its residents. Lack of transparency and justification. My research has found no justification for this VIP program within San Mateo City Charter or municipal codes. The program's existence and its negative impact on residents raise serious concerns about its legality and ethical implications. Increased demand, diminished access. The closure of nearby public golf courses has further strained the availability of affordable golf on the peninsula. The VIP program exacerbates this issue by reserving a significant portion of tee times for...
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
Oh, that's it?
Thank you, your time is up. Our next and final speaker in chamber will be Crystal.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Cristal Mondehar. I'm a constituent of San Mateo. I live in Bay Meadows, representing a residence from Bay Meadows regarding just the parking situation, the difficulty that it has caused for residents. I'm speaking as a mom, as a nurse, as a coach for kids, as a volunteer for our community. it has caused disruption in a way that some of our residents are bringing up that they're having a hard time with family helpers, nannies, visitors, seniors that come and only are limited to 2-hour parking. It's a very kind of for more individualistic type of setting right now that there's parking limits of just 2 hours. And it has been affecting the residents. Before, during the COVID times, that it wasn't restricted to that. Families and have much easier time with parking and with just lifestyle and daily living. And there's a lot. Sometimes construction happens and there's no parking outside. I believe like some of our residents, I was able to have a conversation with you, Mayor Newsom, and you were very attentive to our words and our stories, and we're very thankful for that. And I just wanted to bring up to kind of ask, I know I'm not allowed to ask because it's a comment, what our options are, and maybe hopefully we can compromise with you and just to help out our residents because we live there, and we're supporting each other there. So, I don't know if you probably won't understand how we're feeling day to day, but I do want to just make sure like everyone in our community, our residents of Bay Meadows, have an easier time just 2-hour parking limit for all streets. Even a compromise would help, like even, maybe leaving 2 streets, like maybe near the parks, just without restrictions. Just there's a lot of kids out there and they just want to play sometimes or just run around the track just for healthy reasons at the very least. Thank you. I know I only have 32 seconds, so I just wanted to thank you for your time. I didn't prepare anything, by the way. I just ran here. Thank you again so much. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to our virtual environment, our first speaker will be Kathy Kwan. Kathy, please unmute your mic.
Hi, yes, I'm Kathy. I'm also a resident of Bay Meadows. So I have a very small infant who we've hired a nanny to take care of because she has some minor health issues. And unfortunately, this nanny doesn't have anywhere to park in our neighborhood, causing great concern to us. It was raining today and she wasn't able to come to our house. I'm just wondering what plan the city had in mind when they approved the developer's asks to have essentially no parking in the neighborhood, and whether or not our council members actually care about the residents of these developments, not just the developers. I would really appreciate if Rob Newsom could actually come to his district and speak to the residents in Bay Meadows, as he has promised in the last meeting. There have been over 50 families who have signed a petition saying that their childcare needs and their home health aid needs have been affected by the new parking, and we haven't heard from him. So, Rob Newsom, please come to our neighborhood, make good on your promise.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Mike Squire. Mike, please unmute your microphone.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Thanks so much to Mayor Newsom and members of the council. I wanted to urge the council and city to get involved as soon as possible, as has been discussed several times, on the 10192 Direct Connector project that is planning on or is being considered for Fiesta Gardens. This past week, CCAG unanimously approved a memorandum of understanding regarding the project in conjunction with SMCTA. And I know that several members of council have had issues with the project, given that it could require eminent domain of residences as well as businesses. It will increase pollution at Fiesta Gardens School and a lot of lower income neighborhoods adjacent to the highway. It'll also lead to even more traffic in the area, which in the cases of crashes on 101 will be offloaded onto San Mateo streets, increasing congestion, pollution, road wear and tear, and traffic violence. So I'm just wondering at what point the city will either hold a study session or something in response to this project, if indeed it does see it as a negative for San Mateo. Again, this project would build a whole new flyover at a cost of upwards of $300 million. The benefit would largely accrue to wealthy East Bay residents who can afford Fast Track. There's currently no public transit on that corridor, as Alameda's buses no longer come across. And it would not increase the number of general purpose lanes. So it would only be appropriate for those paying for Fast Track. So here, San Mateo taxpayers are dealing with inconvenience and costs simply to provide faster traffic for East Bay residents. It doesn't seem to make sense to me. And if the council wants to stop this before it gets too far along, as Jackie Spear referred to, some of these projects seem to have a life of their own. I'd encourage you guys to get involved as soon as possible, and I'm happy to help facilitate that. Thanks so much. Have a good day.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Kieran. Kieran, please unmute your mic.
Hi, this is can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, this is Kiran Gadgankar. I'm a Bay Meadows resident, and I would like to comment on the current changes to the parking situation. So I think I was in attendance to the State of the City update last week, and two things that stood out from that update were engagement and budget. And so regarding the Bay Meadows parking changes, what appears to have happened is that the city manager on his own has made a change that has impacted 2,000 residents of the city, taxpayers, without any community engagement at all. And so here we are today, coming back to the city and requesting why that change was made without any engagement. Second, the city manager then chose to spend budget that we don't have on signage, mailing, stickers to tell us that he was now making this change on his own. A person that was not elected to the council, who was appointed to his role. So in response, I've been told, and all of the residents have been told, that this was the plan. This was the plan 20 years ago. Well, we're not 20 years ago. We're here today, right? And times have changed. People who've lived in the neighborhood, their families have grown. They now have drivers. People have nannies. We're in hybrid work situation. Things have changed. So I want the council to look at this issue and come back to the residents, the taxpayer, and say, what are you going to do to resolve this problem? I would like to point out that Wilson Meany, the developer, requested changes to the use of the buildings in this neighborhood. And the council obliged with those changes. So why the council is not willing to listen to the residents and make a change is beneath me. So I would like to request immediately that there is a pause to the parking enforcement until there's proper engagement with the community that you promised last week would happen. And then once we've had some meaningful engagement, we can proceed with a solution. Again, this is a problem. As a resident and a taxpayer, we are bringing to your attention. I'm looking for you to come to us with a solution, not to keep referencing 20-year-old plans to us. Doesn't help. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Ed Huang. Ed, please unmute your mic.
Yes, hello. Thank you, City Council, Mayor Newsom. I just wanted to provide another perspective. My name is Ed Wong. I've lived in Bay Meadows for 5 years, have lived in the Peninsula for 20, and wanted to both highlight a different perspective on the impact of the parking change policy. I currently do commute to work. Love that opportunity to live close to the Hillsdale station. However, the parking policy now prevents me from actually using my monthly pass because I have to move that car every 2 hours. Do I need to park on the street? Yeah, unfortunately, I live in a 4-bedroom apartment, which only has spaces for 2 cars, 5 people in the family, all of driving age as they've grown up. it's become a problem. I only highlight that just to show that there's a complexity to the issues and impact. You've heard other comments about nannies and help and just in general. I'm looking for engagement. Would love to talk further with the city council and figure out if we can't find a solution that perhaps balances all of the climate, the congestion, and just trying to make things work day to day. And I also do want to say that whatever the outcome is, it's not just short term. I would hate to see this community become transaction oriented, which I fear is the current way it's going. Transaction in the sense of come to Bay Meadows or San Mateo just for a short period. There's a policy in place that makes it difficult to stay there. Go find parking across the street and impact other residents just because we're fighting to, have a place for a car while we go about our daily lives. I clearly don't want that. I love that San Mateo is a community that could support people laying down roots. So this is my request, please, for us to revisit this policy and look at it from the perspective of the many residents who are impacted. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Raf Say. Raf, please unmute your mic.
Hi, good evening. Raf Say speaking. I'm also a Bay Meadows resident, and I'm also speaking about the parking. I was at the city council meeting last week, and I wanted to zoom out and I think, of course, empathize with the decisions that the council has to make, from a finance perspective, environmental impact, city planning, so many things. And the point is, I think as many others have made, yes, a policy probably out of good intention that was made 20 years ago doesn't really match the needs and the reality of today. So really just asking for a revisiting of the objectives and the policy and if the policies are really achieving those goals. I won't repeat what anyone else has made. I want to plus one and support everything that everyone else has said. I also want to represent and just speak for other people that don't have the privilege to take an hour, 2 hours to come and speak to council, people that work in this community, including restaurant workers, part-time janitors in office buildings who are also suffering the same things. So I'll give a specific case study of a friend and a person who works at one of the restaurants nearby. Since the parking has started, she, has 2 kids, working an hourly job, has had 3 tickets already. And that's so absurd, that she has to leave her restaurant every couple hours to repark her car. And that's just really, really challenging. And if you think of someone who's making maybe $20 an hour and these tickets really add up and really eat into their paycheck. So it isn't just the residents. And I really love whoever said, we don't want this to be a transactional community because, we all live here and the people that work around here also make it a community. So thank you all for thinking about how we can reverse this.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Manish. Manish, please unmute your mic.
I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Great. I'm also a San Mateo resident. I've been one for about 13 years almost, and a Bay Meadows resident almost since its inception. And I just want to, echo the thoughts of everyone here. I don't think we're demanding a certain rule or a certain change. We're trying to get engaged. We all are very engaged in our community, as evidenced by just how many of us are here to speak on this matter. And we want to look for solutions for the community, both the businesses, the residents, our guests, our caretakers. And I think we acknowledge that there were certain circumstances that led to the 2-hour limits and it being a transit-oriented community. But a lot of things have changed in transit. We obviously don't have the same commuting times. We don't have the same commuting demands. And as another resident mentioned, the actual restrictions in some cases keep us from using better sources of transit like the Caltrain. I'd also note that I think there used to be shuttle services that have in the neighborhood that have stopped operation, and so while we're trying to emphasize transit, we are also not investing in other ways to support that. So we all just really want to be engaged, come up with a solution. It's not, a tenable situation to have all these problems with parking, be just in your own neighborhood. And I would also, note that just down the street, not too far away, there's, disparate treatment of regions that are very, very similarly situated. So it's just not a favorable situation. But yeah, I think the others have said everything very eloquently, and I'll leave it to that. But I think we're just really looking for engagement rather than just a sort of rule changes without communication.
Thank you. And our final speaker, as was announced earlier, will be Mahir Patel. Mahir, please unmute your mic.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to speak at this City Council meeting. I'm also representing Bay Meadows. I've lived in Bay Meadows since pretty much its inception, since 2014, and have lived and loved the neighborhood over the last decade. We've had 2 kids in that time frame, and we've had a pandemic, and things have changed a lot over that time. I would love to echo the sentiments of my fellow neighbors, and one perspective I would like to add is that before the pandemic, we did not really work from home, and if we had nannies come home, they could use our garages. Since the pandemic, both my wife and I have a much more flexible working situation, and we prefer to be at home so we can be closer to our loved ones and our little ones. So while both of us are working from home and pretty much back-to-back meetings all day, as you might imagine, a nanny is here to take care of our little one, and it does become very challenging for her to have to manage her car every couple of hours. Now, the situation has become since then that I've started going into work more often just because we have a vacant parking spot that way in our garage for her to park. It is not a very ideal situation that even I would love to echo and that it is none of these problems are easy to solve, and totally appreciate that there is a lot of nuance and subtlety to every scenario that the city faces. But we would love to have the city commit to a meeting with the residents in the next 2 weeks so we can discuss solutions. And in the meantime, kindly consider the pausing the enforcement of the parking restrictions until this meeting takes place and a workable solution can be found. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mayor Newsom, that concludes public comment.
Thank you. And while we can't address this now because it's not agendized, I will talk about this topic during our reports and announcements session at the end of the meeting. Moving along. Yes. Council member.
Thank you. Through the mayor, there was also a topic that came up about, I think Mike Swire brought it up. About the CCAG direct connector project. I will also bring that up in reports and announcements. Thank you.
Thank you. I look forward to talking about that as well. Thank you. Moving along. New business, 2024 annual progress reports, housing element, general plan, and housing successor. That's the aftershock. Morley. St. Patty's Day shaker. All right.
You haven't had any Guinness yet either.
Yeah, I know. All right. Where were we? Thanks. Yeah. Housing element, general plan, and housing successor agency approval. We have a presentation by Rachel Horst, our housing manager, and Steve Golden, our principal planner. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Newsom. Good evening, council members. We're just getting our PowerPoint up and running here. So this evening, we will be giving an overview of annual progress reports, including the housing element and the general plan annual progress reports. We just wanted to acknowledge, first off, the various staff members who, we're going to get this. Just one moment. Thank you. The various staff members who contributed to these annual progress reports. As you can see here, this is a multi-division effort. And just a bit of statutory background on annual progress reports. The government code does require local planning agencies like San Mateo to submit an annual progress report, or APR, on the status of both the housing element and the full general plan. And there is a third APR that we are seeking to submit by the April 1st deadline, and that is required by the Health and Safety Code, which requires the city as the successor agency to the redevelopment agency to submit an annual housing successor agency report. This is a financial report on the fund balance of the housing successor, any affordable units that were funded in the prior fiscal year, and the outlook for expenditures in the coming years. Right. This, the first bullet shows us where we are with the housing element. We're towards the beginning of the cycle, the 2023-2031 housing element cycle. We also call that the RHNA cycle, the Regional Housing Needs Allocation. The city adopted this on May 20th, 2024, and it was subsequently deemed to be in substantial compliance with the law by HCD, the Department of Housing and Community Development, on July 23rd of that year. So this marks the second year of reporting for this APR, given that 2023 was the first year. The San Mateo General Plan 2040, or Strive San Mateo, was adopted on March 18th, 2024, and so this marks the first year of reporting on this general plan. This chart is very similar to what you will see in both the agenda report and in the actual APR attachment to the agenda report in Table B. It's showing the city's RHNA allocation in that first column, totaling over 7,000 units, and then broken down into the different affordability levels. And then each of these columns is showing in the projection period, which is the 6 months prior to the start of the cycle, which counts towards this RHNA cycle, 23 and 24. So of course, we're reporting on the 167 units here, broken down into their respective affordability levels. And you can see how we're doing against the total RHNA in that last column. So of course, there is a lot still to be done, but we are towards the beginning of the cycle, and there is a fairly robust pipeline that we will touch on in a subsequent slide. So just to go down a little bit more into detail on that chart, since we showed number of units, just a reminder that HCD counts, or the law counts, units that received a building permit in a given year towards the RHNA. So when we say, when we look at those numbers, we are looking at those units or those developments that received a building permit. This includes Peninsula Heights. That's a major multifamily project. You'll see 67 units for 2024, but this project is happening over multiple years. So it consists of 290 total units, of which 29 are affordable. So 67 units are from 2024. And then in italics, we have 477th 9th Avenue. This project technically it started in 2025, so it just missed the 2024 cutoff for building permit. It was entitled in 2024. And this is a significant project as well, 120 units, of which 12 are affordable. And then for projects that were completed in 2024, we have Kiku Crossing, which is a fully affordable development on city-owned land, 225 units. 303 Baldwin, that's a mixed-use development with 64 rental units, of which 6 are affordable. And 3069 East Kine or Keene, which is part of Bay Meadows, latter phase of Bay Meadows, 54 units, of which 5 are affordable, and these are also rental. So I'm going to hand it over to Steve to dive deeper into ADUs, which also contributed significantly to our RHNA numbers.
All right, thank you, Rachel. So we did want to report on our ADU activity in 2024. We did have 84 ADU applications submitted, 64 ADU permits were issued, and 7 of those were discretionary ADU applications are processed. We're also highlighting that 78% of ADU permits issued were located in the high or highest resource areas of San Mateo. So you can see on the right-hand side of the slide, this is the California tax credit allocation committees and the HCD opportunity areas shown in those breakdown in those different opportunity categories. And this maps out where each ADU was permitted in 2023 and 2024, and the distribution of which resource areas in the table up towards top. We did receive a letter from HCD in November of 2024 regarding compliance with state law, and the Planning Division responded in a letter back to HCD in December. And then Planning is going to be proposing amendments to the ADU ordinance, either with a comprehensive zoning update or earlier, depending on timing. We'll also move forward with an ADU affordability survey for which will be implemented during permit issuance. And the affordability survey was created by ABAG in consultation and coordination with 21 Elements and our partners in the county and throughout the Bay Area. We're also reporting on SB 9 projects. While they're not a significant portion of housing development, you did want an annual report back to council. So just highlighting, since that came in effect, we've had 5 SB 9 applications have been submitted, 3 of those being ministerial, 2 of those discretionary. The discretionary ones are because those projects didn't comply with all of the development standards in the SB 9 ordinance. To the right is kind of a breakdown as far as the type of SB 9 project. It falls into either an urban lot split or a 2-unit development. And then this past year, we only received 2 SB 9 applications that we considered complete. And of the 2, one required a discretionary review. It was appealed to the Planning Commission. It was approved, appealed to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission upheld the zoning administrator's approval. Moving on, we do have a number of what we're calling pipeline projects. Again, as Rachel was mentioning, we don't get credit until permits are issued. So there's a number of pipeline projects that fit into these categories. Since Measure T was passed, we've seen a large uptick in SB 330 preliminary applications. There's 7. And SB 330 preliminary applications vest city policies and development standards, and also lock in impact fees. So it's a benefit to the developer. Almost about 3,000 units there. We have a number of planning applications under review, totaling 467. And then we do have a number of approved planning applications that total 495 units. And just wanted to highlight on SB 330, we are seeing a larger number of BMR units. Of those 2,926, 544 of them are BMR units. And to note, one project, the Conquer Passage project, is proposing more than 20% BMR to be considered a by right housing project. As far as progress.
Sorry, excuse me. Can you confirm what slide number that is? The one you just had up.
I believe that's 9.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Well, as far as progress on the housing elements goals, policies, and programs for this past year, you'll hear a lot about Measure T throughout our discussion tonight, but the voters passed that in November of 2024. It increased the capacity by almost 20,000 units citywide and about 10,000 units in the sites inventory list in the housing element. Our base densities in the general plan study areas increased by 50 to 80 dwelling units per acre, and our height limits in study areas increased by up to 3 stories. We've streamlined the housing application review process by eliminating requirements for planning pre-applications. Those are only voluntary now. We eliminated requirement for the peer-reviewed design if projects comply with objective design standards. And those are also only implemented if to the discretion of the zoning administrator. And then we came to the council back in July of last year, looking at minimum residential densities and mixed use developments with residential components. And the council also discussed family size residential units. And we hope to come back to council sometime this year, at the beginning of this year, to address those issues with direction from the council. We also, whoops, sorry about that. Something just flew forward. Okay. We also addressed tenant protections and the anti-displacement policies in the housing element. There was 2 workshops that were held last year, hosted by the Community Relations Commission, one in November and one in January, and a series of focus group meetings to solicit input from the community that started in the fall and will continue in 2025. We're hoping to come back to council for a study session on April 21st. And last but not least, we have several policies that we're addressing with zoning code amendments, and that will be another item on the agenda. So I won't talk too much about that one. Okay, pivoting a little bit to the 2024 General Plan Annual Progress Report. Just a quick background. General Plan 2040 did incorporate the 8 required elements, including land use, circulation, housing, conservation, open space, noise, and safety. There were 3 themes that were incorporated throughout all these elements, including environmental justice, sustainability, and community engagement. And this is the city's first general plan to specifically identify and address equity priority communities, climate change, and sea level rise. And here's some notable things on the implementation of the general plan in 2024. There's many more than this, but just highlighting on a few. Again, Measure T was approved by the voters. Since then, we've gotten those 7 SB 330 preliminary applications. The city was awarded the Caltrans Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant for the Climate Adaptation Plan for sea level rise. The design for the 3rd and Norfolk intersection safety improvements was completed in 2024, and construction began in February of this year. And then finally, the North Central Complete Streets Plan was developed in coordination with the community, focusing on the North Central area, which is an equity priority area. During 2024, the city continued working on the plan and held outreach events. And the plan is nearly complete, and we hope to have that done this year. Again, this is just the highlights in the general plan APR, and the APR does include a more exhaustive list. So with that, Rachel and I would like to thank you, and we can answer any questions you might have.
Thank you for a great presentation. First, we'll open it up to public comment. Mr. Clerk, are there any requests for public comment on this issue?
Certainly, Mayor Newsom, we have not received any requests to speak in chamber. In our virtual environment, if you wish to speak on this item, item number 11, please raise your hand now. I will give you just a few moments to do so. Mayor Newsom, we have one request to speak, so that would be 3 minutes per speaker, and our speaker is Jeremy Levine. Jeremy, please go ahead and unmute your mic.
Thank you.
Good evening, City Council members. Thank you, staff, for that really informative presentation. I think it's really amazing how much work the city has done to meet its arena, and I think Measure T is going to be a really important tool to actually make the zoning feasible, and you're seeing that in all the new developments that you're getting. I just want to raise the point that of all those units that staff showed that have recently been submitted in new development applications, a lot of them are going to be built on 10 or 20-year timelines. The Hillsdale development is not a 3 or 5 year project. It's a 20-year project. We don't know how long Concar Passage is going to take. It's already been resubmitted once with fewer units than it originally had. So the city, as it celebrates its hard work, I think can also be looking to ways to speed up the entitlement process and the permitting process so that you can continue pushing up these numbers while ensuring that staff have the time and capacity to process the hopefully ever increasing number of applications that will come because of the efforts you are doing to make new housing possible. And I think there's some good work that's going to be on the agenda later tonight to make that happen. So I'm looking forward to that discussion.
Thank you. Mayor Newsom, that concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you. We will close public comment and open it up to questions, comments, and motions from the council. Does anyone want to go first? Councilmember Diaz-Nash.
Thank you, both of you, and all the people who put all the work together that went into those slides. We're beginning to implement, we're beginning to do, and I look forward to seeing so much more coming. I think it would be really interesting for you to give a high-level piece of feedback about what you were thinking of when the general plan was being developed in terms of where development submissions would come and what we're seeing now. Because as I understand, we're seeing some big differences in terms of what people are doing versus what we might have thought, and for the better when it comes to housing. So maybe that's you, Zach.
Through the mayor, Zach Dahl, Community Development Director. Yes, I think in many ways we are seeing growth or proposals happening on sites that we did anticipate, and then other ones that weren't necessarily on the housing element sites inventory because there wasn't necessarily evidence at that time to justify their inclusion, but awareness that there was definitely interest in seeing those proposals move forward. And so I think what we're seeing is, one, it's really heartening to see the increased number of affordable units with each project, and that's a result of the increase in the base density. And so I think that's probably the most exciting development here is with these units, we're seeing a higher percentage. You could see in past years, BMR units around 10% or so of the total because there was a lower base density and more reliance on state density bonus law. Now with this increased base density, projects aren't needing to use as much state density bonus, and so we're getting a higher percentage, much closer to our 15%. And I think also the proposal at Concar with close to or around 25% affordable is a exciting development as a way to move that project forward. So I think in many ways, these are projects that we were envisioning with the completion of the general plan, but then we are seeing new opportunities open up on sites that weren't necessarily on our radar. And based on the discussions we're having, I would imagine we'll see more proposals in the coming months as other projects move forward. So I think we're seeing exciting groundwork. 23 and 24 were slower due to a larger economic factors going on, but I think we're laying the groundwork well for significant progress in the coming year and years.
Thank you for that. And a follow-up question, given that whether we planned a specific site or not, we're getting more and more development projects, proposals, planning, which turns into more and more work for city staff. So how are we thinking about managing that? I know Jeremy Levine in public comment talked about speeding up building permit processes, and that's something that is absolutely on our radar. But how else are we considering this? Because we want to make sure that we give each project the attention it deserves, and for the residents as well as for our development partners. But we also want to keep ahead of the flow.
Definitely, and I can speak to a couple of different initiatives. I think I want to highlight, we have an internal review process for our planning application process that's currently underway, and this is looking at how we process it. And I think the important thing here is the best use of staff resources as projects move through. Where are pain points, challenges? What's the best use of staff time? And the key is focusing on the key issues that are really of highest importance to the community, and not necessarily spending time on other issues that maybe are more time burns, but aren't really furthering key objectives. And so we're hoping with that effort, we'll have a streamlined process in terms of how projects can move forward, and it gives staff the bandwidth to really focus on key community issues or core elements of a project that we want to make sure we pay attention to. We also are working to keep our planning division fully staffed. We do have a couple of vacancies that we're getting ready to recruit for. We also have a couple of consultants that have been retained and are on our bench and can provide for augmentation as needed to keep our planning projects moving forward, because it's important. We have state mandated timelines. And so we want to make sure we have the staff to keep these projects moving and be responsive to ebbs and flows. When projects come in, we can't necessarily plan them in an orderly, even flow. So we have to be prepared when there are spikes to keep all of those moving forward. We are also continually looking at our permitting process, ways to improve it. And I think a lot of that information, that kind of staff reflection as we look at it, will be borne out as we go through our comprehensive zoning code update, which I think will be a critical effort. So we're kind of in a transition as we go through. We've allocated 2 years. We're going to prioritize and move it through as quickly as we can, especially key important updates that will support orderly progress by planning applications. So I think we've done a lot of work. We're laying some great groundwork, but we've still got a lot left to do to really have an optimal zoning code that implements the general plan, focuses on key issues, but then doesn't, that frees us up to let go of other issues that are more busy work than really fruitful for addressing community needs and moving projects through.
Excellent. I think that's very important. One thing, and I'm sure my colleagues would agree with me, is that as we're going through all this, that we very much keep the holistic perspective of each project in mind, as opposed to just, and you don't do this, but checking the boxes and getting the projects, thinking about what it's going to mean for our community, because this is going to be a lot of change. And people need to understand how it all fits together and what are the impacts on everything from transportation to open space to you name it, you've heard it. But I think we would very much like to keep the focus there too, and look forward to your continuing updates on that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Anyone else? Yes, Councilmember Sorka Kadigi.
Thank you. Great presentation. I did just want to follow up on your comments about the ADU ordinance changes. Can we get a better sense of what you guys are thinking about or what that might look like in the future? I know it's very broad.
Then no worries. And during our housing element and general plan process back in 2022, HCD notified us that they had concerns with some deficiencies in our ordinance, even though it had been that we had worked closely with HCD through adoption. 2 years later, in the fall of 24, we finally heard from them on what those concerns were. There were 17 comments. Some of them were more minor, kind of minor tweaks in language. Some were actually more reflective of state law that went into effect in 2024. So we did assess and provide a response letter within 30 days of receiving it, and committed to moving forward with an ordinance to address each of those comments during this year. We're looking at the best timing to bundle it with other code amendment efforts, potentially looking at some updates to our SB 9 ordinance that are needed as well, and maybe the best point as part of our comprehensive zoning code update. There is probably nothing that will significantly change other than responding to recent developments in state law, providing for clarifications, and some other adjustments, I think really to allow flexibility, confirming by right and other processes with ADUs. So I don't have super specific details, but our general assessment was there were no really game changer comments in there that would significantly alter our ADU ordinance.
Thank you. Could you put up slide 9 again, please? Sorry, I just need a minute to take a note on these new SB 33 prelim applications, but if we want to move on to other council comments, that'd be great.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, through the mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I did also have one question about ADUs. In another slide, there was a report on the number of applications that came through and the number that were eventually processed, and I noticed a gap of about 20. And so I was just wondering if you could say a little more about what causes applications to not be completely processed. I'm sure it's a diversity of reasons, but is there anything you can share to give us a better sense of why?
Through the mayor, often what you're seeing is a lag between applications when they're submitted and when they're issued. And so I would say for a chunk of those, they're probably still making their way through the process. So some of those may have been submitted in the last few months of the year, so they're still making their way through. We do have some that ultimately get withdrawn by applicants, but generally it's a chunk of those, say 20, they would probably be issued within the first half of 2025. So then those would show up as permits issued. So you'll always see kind of a delay, and oftentimes we use those applications to gauge kind of permit next year or 2 year down the road ultimate production. But yes, there are a certain number that get withdrawn or never ultimately get pulled by the applicant.
Okay, thank you. I'll just give a quick comment to wrap up that I appreciate the update. I'm optimistic about our future. There's lots of work left to do, but we can see on this slide that there are some projects coming in, and I look forward to the next couple reports with the ongoing work, and those are my comments.
You can take down the slide now. Thank you.
Or leave it. It's fine. Nicole, do you have anything? Okay. Well, I like that this slides up because I'm going to ask one question about it. Concord Passage, at what point did it move from an approved or under review, or was it always preliminary? Did it move back a step?
It had been approved, and in fact, it had an extension. And then just about 30 days ago, they submitted their preliminary SB 330 application. So it's a different project, and we'll see how it aligns with the by right housing ordinance, which will be a first for the city as well.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I heard that they're moving towards more condos and townhouses. Do we track what percentage of new builds are going to be rental only versus purchasable condos and homes?
We do in some way. We don't necessarily have a summary of that quite yet, but we're working on our dashboard to show projects, and that's certainly something we can add to it.
Sure, I think that would be great. Thank you. So I can't help but notice that we have within a mile of my house 7 city blocks that are vacant lots right now. And everybody says it's the economy, stupid. So I guess my question is, are we concerned that as the hopefully soon economy corrects itself or interest rates come down a few points, that we're going to see a huge boom of all of a sudden people are building? Are we concerned that that could cause a problem with city staffing, that we're going to have this, race to build?
So to the degree that we can, we're always thinking ahead and trying to plan to make sure we have the appropriate staff resources. Obviously, it starts with the planning team, with the housing team. Then this moves into our plan checkers and our permit processing unit, and then ultimately our inspectors out in the field. And so with the team we have and with bench consultants that provide augmentation when we need, we are definitely watching this. And we use indicators like this to gauge when we might need to add a key position. Say, maybe we know, hey, we're seeing a bunch of SB 330s now. That's 2 or 3 years in theory construction. So let's make sure we have an inspection team that could cover projects like that, or that we have senior level inspectors that are able to inspect these larger and more complex projects. So yes, we're definitely tracking these numbers and then making sure our team is equipped to be able to respond and keep these projects moving, and then also do what we need to for inspections, building code compliance, and the like.
Great. Thank you. That's a great answer. Thank you so much. Fantastic presentation. Yes, no problem. Councilmember Diaz-Nash.
Through the mayor, I apologize. I forgot. The new Concar Passage submission, the Peninsula Lively Arts is no longer part of that project. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's primarily housing, and there is about 16,000 square feet of commercial space, which is proposed for, I think, some specific retailers, but that's it as far as non-residential.
Because there was a very long and deep conversation with the community, and that was a very important part of the original Concar Passage agreement. Has there been any attempt to reach out to the development partners and say, how can we try and make this happen? Because that's...
Through the mayor, yes, we had some early communications with the applicant team, and we'll be continuing to have those, but highlighting that space for the nonprofits, community partners like that. And we don't have specifics. This is a preliminary application, but we did highlight that, and there was openness to discussing that. I think there's a number of factors, but I think as we move closer to a formal application, we'll be able to get more clarity on what's happening there and what opportunities there might be.
Yeah, I would very much like to underline the importance of that. So thank you.
Okay. Mr. Clerk, there is a statement that we are going to have a recommendation to approve. Do we need a council? Okay, fantastic. Does anyone want to make a recommendation to approve?
Yes, I would be happy to move that we approve the annual progress reports and direct the city manager to submit the 2024 general plan annual progress report to the California Office of Policy and Research, the 2024 housing element annual progress report to the California Department of Housing and Community Development, and the 2024 housing successor agency annual report to the California Department of Finance.
Second.
We have a second. Can we get a roll call, please?
Deputy Mayor Lorraine?
Yes.
Councilmember Fernandez?
Yes.
Councilmember Diaz-Nash?
Yes.
Councilmember Sviako-Goditsky?
Yes.
Mayor Newsom?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Fantastic. We're going to move on to item number 12, public hearing, General Plan 2040 Land Use Map Amendments Adoption, presentation by Summer Smith, the AICP Senior Planner. And before we do, I've been told that one of our council members may have to recuse themselves. Is there a council member that needs to recuse themselves? Okay. Well,
Yes, I will recuse myself from voting on adopting a resolution amending the general plan land use designation at the property at 1770 South Amphlett Boulevard because it's located within 500 feet of my employer's address where I have a financial interest. Thank you.
see you soon. All right. So we're going to adopt a resolution amending the general plan land use designation at 1770 South Amphlett and adopt a resolution amending the general plan land use designations at 12 specified locations where both resolutions will amend the general plan 2040 land use map. And now we'll take our presentation. Fun fact while we're waiting, does anyone want to guess where the earthquake that we had a half hour ago was epicentered?
Where?
What day is today?
St. Patrick's.
Dublin, California, 4.2.
Look at the Irish.
Truly a St. Patty's Day shaker. Did I stall enough? Was that enough? Are we ready? Okay, Summer.
Thank you, Mayor Newsom and members of the City Council. Summer Smith, Senior Planner, here to provide the staff presentation for Agenda Item 12, General Plan 2040 Land Use Map Amendments. Tonight's presentation will begin with the Land Use Map Amendment for 1770 South Amphlett Boulevard, followed by the remaining 12 sites. In March 2024, the City Council adopted Strive San Mateo General Plan 2040. Right before the general plan adoption hearings, the owner of the Marriott Hotel, located at 1770 South Amphlett Boulevard, announced that it would be closing. During the adoption hearings, City Council had identified this site as an opportunity to increase the flexibility in permitted uses and housing production potential by redesignating it from regional commercial to mixed-use high, and directed staff to bring the amendment to the Planning Commission for consideration. Next, we'll move into regulatory compliance. Measure 2 was placed on the November ballot and approved by voters to allow the height, density, and intensity limits to exceed those set by Measure Y. It included a provision specifying that the change in land use for the site could occur, but required that the amendment undergo Planning Commission and City Council public hearings in compliance with state and local law. Since this proposed land use map amendment was heard by the Planning Commission on January 28th and is before the council tonight, if approved, it would be consistent with Measure T and the general plan's land use element. The no net loss requirement, as implemented under the Housing Crisis Act, prohibits a city from reducing the residential capacity of a site without concurrently increasing density on other parcels in the jurisdiction. The change in land use designation complies with this requirement because the proposed designation will increase the residential capacity of the site by a maximum of 822 units. The proposed amendment is exempt from CEQA because it is consistent with the type of allowable land uses and overall plan development evaluated in the Program Environmental Impact Report for the general plan. Additionally, the city, as lead agency, has determined that it will not result in any substantial changes to the general plan or circumstances under which the EIR was undertaken. All meeting noticing requirements were met, including tribal consultation required under SB Senate Bill 18 for amendments to general plans. Staff also sent a courtesy letter to the property owner and tenants of the site. One public comment and general support of all of the amendments was received. Next, we'll move on to the recommendations. At the January 28th Planning Commission meeting, the commissioners considered public comments and recommended that the City Council adopt a resolution to amend the general plan land use designation at 1770 South Amplet Boulevard from regional commercial to mixed use high. Tonight, staff also has the same recommendation that the council approve the amendment at this location. And that concludes staff presentation on the site. I'm available for any questions you may have.
Fantastic. Thank you, Summer. Before we do that, do we have any public comment requests?
Mayor Newsom, I have not received any requests to speak in chambers. If you're participating remotely and wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand now. Mayor Newsom, there is no request to speak on this item.
Okay, then we will close public comment and open to questions, comments, and motions from the council. Does anyone want to go first? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, through the mayor. If no one has any questions, I would move for approval.
I do have a question.
Okay.
Sorry, I was trying to be polite. My question is that this space generates a lot, or generated a lot, of TOT tax for the city of San Mateo. Does changing the zoning of this preclude us from being able to put a hotel back in its place or maintain a portion of the hotel in its space?
Through the mayor, the change from regional commercial to mixed use high gives flexibility in the permitted uses, so it would not prevent a hotel from going back in this location.
Okay, that's fantastic. And that is all of my questions. Thank you. I think I heard a motion.
Yes, I move that we adopt a resolution amending the general plan land use designation at 1770 South Amphet Boulevard.
Second? I'll second.
Second.
I'll second. Roll call. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Lorraine?
Yes.
Mayor Newsom?
Yes.
Councilmember Diaz-Nash?
Yes.
Councilmember Fernandez?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
And Prasanna, is the city attorney, is going to go grab back our other council member. Grab back is not the right word. You're right. Okay. Ask her to return to the council chambers. We're now moving on to item number 13, public hearing, housing element and general plan ballot measure. What was that?
Yeah, there are more locations for 12 when Danielle gets.
There's more housing sites for this item
Oh, I'm sorry.
because of Councilmember Circo-Gooditsky.
Well, then wait, we shouldn't have taken a vote then.
No, you're okay on that. So that
Oh, so-
Councilmember Circo-Gooditsky can come
That's
back
not
on the
outlined.
dais
Got
now.
it. Okay, so we have to come back for the rest of 12 and then do the vote, second
Yeah,
vote.
and she
Okay,
can sit up there now.
got it. Thank you. Sorry, not clear, but thank you. Didn't take enough time for the. Woo, welcome back. Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Welcome back, Councilmember Circo-Gooditsky. All right, so we're actually resuming part 12 regarding the other 12 specified land use locations. Thank you, Summer.
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, last year, the City Council adopted Strive San Mateo General Plan 2040. During the general plan adoption hearings, City Council identified one site that could provide increased flexibility and housing production potential with a different land use designation than what was originally proposed. In the time since adoption, staff and individual landowners have identified 11 additional sites across the city where land use designations are inconsistent with the existing and or surrounding land uses, and amendments are needed for consistency. This slide shows a map of the 12 sites proposed for the land use amendments, with the site identified by the City Council, site number 10, boxed in blue. Site 10 consists of the office buildings at 66 and 160 Bovid Road. Here is a table of the 12 sites, which provides associated addresses and existing and recommended land uses. Site 10, identified by City Council, is shaded in blue, with a recommended land use designation of mixed use high. All remaining sites are those with recommended amendments to align with existing or surrounding land uses. To name a few, Site 1, 831 Monte Diablo Avenue, has a recommended land use designation of quasi-public to align with the existing religious institutional ownership and use. Site 5, 55 West 5th Avenue, has a recommended land use designation of residential high to align with the existing multifamily use. And Site 6, 606 through 800 South B Street, has a recommended land use designation of mixed use medium 2 to align with the existing and surrounding uses. If the council wishes to view these sites and their surrounding land uses up close in detail, staff has backup slides with maps to show each individual site. Next, we'll move on to regulatory compliance. Now that the full council is in chambers, I'll briefly recap the key points discussed to ensure that everyone has the same information. The amendments proposed today are consistent with Measure T because Measure T requires all future general plan land use map amendments, including the 7 sites that were listed in the measure, to undergo Planning Commission and City Council public hearings, which is how these amendments have been processed to date. The amendments are consistent with the no net loss requirement because they would result in a maximum net increase of 852 units of residential capacity. And lastly, the proposed amendments are exempt from further review under CEQA. All meeting noticing requirements were met, and staff also sent courtesy letters to all property owners and tenants of the 12 sites. A total of 2 public comments were received for this project. 1 public comment was received prior to the Planning Commission hearing, which inquired about the reduced density at the Arbor Rose condominiums. Staff responded that the reduction was just to reflect the existing townhomes and single-family uses on the site and did not represent a change of policy from the city. The other comment was received today and was in support of all of the amendments. Next, we'll move on to the recommendations. At the January 28th Planning Commission meeting, the commissioners considered public comments and recommended that the City Council adopt a resolution to amend the general plan land use designations at 12 specified locations. With that, staff is also recommending that the City Council approve the amendments at these locations. Thank you, and that concludes staff presentation.
Thank you, Summer. Do we have public comment requests?
Mayor Newsom, I've not received any requests to speak on this item in chamber, and I do not have any hands raised in our virtual environment.
Very good. Then we will close public comment and open it up to council questions, comments. Councilmember Diaz-Nash.
Thank you, and thank you, Summer, for all the work that went into this. Could you do me a favor and put that slide back up that had all the various properties? Thank you very much. There we go. Okay, I listened in on the Planning Commission discussion of all these, and there was lots of back and forth, but ultimately I think a fairly robust agreement among the Planning Commission. So that was great, and I learned a lot along the way. 2 that I want to bring up. Number 1, site number 1 on Monte Diablo, which I think is just something that we all should be very excited about. And we have 2 of the champions of the project sitting in council chambers tonight. So this is an example of how it's tough, it's frustrating, it's bureaucratic, but when there's a will, there's a way. And when the community, the council, staff all want to work together, and the state, I believe we've come up with a really great solution. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And then also the one on Bovet, I think is another interesting example of how more modern, higher, denser buildings and properties can live alongside neighborhoods. And I think that's something for us to understand. And I know that Robert White here is in the audience tonight and has been very involved with the Burrell Neighborhood Association on that as well. So I think there's a lot here to be excited about. And I am very supportive of all the changes here. Thank you.
Councilwoman Sorko-Kadiki.
Yeah, I too watched the Planning Commission, and I just wanted to say, Lisa, did you want to tell people what the 831 Monte Diablo project is and why it's quasi-public?
Is there any way that the public could come up and have comment, or are we at the point where we just, through the mayor, could we ask the public to come up and speak very quickly about what the project is?
That would be great.
Yeah, I just think it's a cool story and an important story that more people in San Mateo should know.
So Reverend Marilyn Bussey is coming up to represent the New Beginnings Transitional Youth Village.
Welcome.
Mayor and City Council people. My name's Marlon Bussey. I'm the pastor of St. James, AME Zion Church in San Mateo. And our project is called New Beginnings. It will be 5 264 square foot units for children that are coming out of, being transitioned out of the foster care system. As we all know, at 21, they're kind of shown the door. And we are going to be the safety net for 5 kids at a time to be able to live there between 21 and a maximum of 26 until they can get their education, their job training, and really be ready to enter into adult life to have a successful life. And so that, in a nutshell, is what we're going to do. They're going to have not only housing, but they'll also have wraparound services, comprehensive wraparound services. So they'll have a guide to help them to get all of the documents they need, to do whatever it is they need to do in order to be ready for success as adults. That's our project.
Fantastic. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
There's a smaller movement within the housing, pro-housing, bigger movement called YIGBY, Yes in God's Backyard. And this is one of the keen examples of what can happen when we have community collaboration with faith centers and with Reverend Penny Nixon, who is the faith liaison for Housing Leadership Council. So I thank you both immensely for your advocacy and your work. And I'm proud it's in my district.
Yeah, it's a really cool project. So glad to see it happening. I also have some additional comments.
Of course.
So there was quite a deal of discussion by the Planning Commission about the 606 to 800 B Street project, more specifically about commercial versus residential uses, and that it could end up with solely residential or solely commercial unless we change development standards. So I'm wondering, Zach, if you can provide some additional comment on that.
So I think what we recognize here is the current land use designation is residential, and along this corridor of B Street, we do have existing ground floor commercial uses, and we have seen an interest for new projects to continue to maintain a commercial presence on the ground floor. And so we identified this where this change opens up the ability to have a project like that. The mixed use designation allows for a range, including mixed use buildings where you could have ground floor commercial and then residential above. And so that's really kind of the genesis here is preserving this edge adjacent to downtown, having the ability to maintain a commercial presence while adding additional housing units above.
Okay, and then for the Arbor Rose condominiums, I think there was some concern raised about the proximity to 101 and that, we're building housing in highly trafficked areas. And so I'm just curious to get your thoughts. I think there was a similar concern for 1050 South Amplet as well.
So what's interesting here is the existing designation is regional commercial, and this was actually the designation prior to Arbor Rose being developed as townhomes, and it was a carryover, and it was a designation that we just missed when the map was amended. And then, so what's proposed now is really a residential designation that aligns with how its existing development is, which is lower density residential townhomes. So there's no reduction in density. This is to align with the existing use. There's clearly no regional commercial activity there at this point. It's just all residential. And then also that narrower strip along Amplet as being a service commercial use, which aligns with the Amplet corridor and recognizes that's better as a service commercial use and not necessarily as residential. So I think it was really that regional commercial was a vestige of the prior uses, but in the current configuration, that residential designation and then that service commercial were most appropriate given how it currently exists.
Okay, and then 66 and 160 Bovitt, can we look at that on the map? And I think this is one that the previous council had brought up. And I think the idea here is to give more flexibility by making it changing the designation to mixed use high. I just want to confirm that.
That was the direction during general plan adoption. This was a specific site. When you look at the surrounding context, the sites over at the shopping center, Burrell Shopping Center, and then the building closer to El Camino were mixed use high. And so this was identified as you've already got this island here, align the land use with these two sites as well. So you could have the ability to have a project, give it maximum flexibility while also allowing opportunities in a location that's close to the Hayward Park Station, close to the transit along El Camino Real, and has good proximity to the 92 interchange as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, could we bring up the map again? I think it was back 2 slides for, well, let me just bring up what I'm talking about. The 1050 lot on Amflet that is the landing strip behind Arbor Rose. Have we given, is it really that thin? Wow. Have we given any thought to having that be able to be developed for apartment units? Because you say that on one hand that, Amflet is very industrial, but north of really third on, there's apartments on Amflet all the way up through Burlingame. So, nothing has been built in that land for now coming up on like 20 years. I'm wondering, do you think rezoning it this way is going to help them put something there, or should we be taking another look at it as a potential apartment building?
This is a challenging site. I believe it's about 30 feet wide. So it's a really narrow site. We did several years back have a pre-application for a storage, a mini storage facility here. Along this section of Amflet, it is primarily non-residential uses. Obviously, it abuts the Arbor Rose residential development. There is some sensitivity to, in our general plan, not placing residential right up against 101 because of the air quality potential impacts that go along with that. Yeah, I mean, this is a policy prerogative. We were mainly looking at, when you go along this stretch of Amflet, it was service commercial on both sides. And that given the recent proposal, which aligned with the service commercial use, that was what drove that recommendation here.
Got it. So do you think there's an opportunity that we will get something put there? Because right now it's very much urban blight. There's constantly vehicles that are parked there, and there's constantly RVs that are there. And we get a lot of concerns from the neighbors that live in Arbor Rose about that.
So I can jump in. We can go back and look and ask our economic development staff to see who the owner is and have a chat with them. Additionally, nothing precludes housing, especially on commercial lands now with state law. Unless, does it?
For service commercial, because it's service commercial light industrial, this is our one commercial zone, which we do preclude housing from.
Okay, so it precludes housing on this side. So with that, though, there are blue collar jobs that these businesses do provide. So that's something to also think about as well of when you're looking at just overall preservation of those economic resources and jobs for our community members.
Yeah, and I'm totally there with you, except that it's been vacant for like 20 years. So,
We can reach out to the property owner.
Yep, fantastic. Thank you. That's all the questions I have. Anyone else? Okay, well then we need a motion to adopt, I'll say it and then see if someone wants, adopt a resolution amending the general plan land use designations at 12 specified locations where both resolutions will amend the general plan 2040 land use map.
I motion.
Second.
Fantastic. Please take roll. Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Councilmember Svier-Buditsky.
Yes.
Councilmember Fernandez.
Yes.
Councilmember Diaz-Nash.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Lorraine.
Yes.
And Mayor Newsom.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, now we're going to move on to public
through the
hearing.
mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
Could we take a bio break for 5 minutes?
We sure can. We will take a 5-minute bio break. Thank you. All right, we're back. We will now hear item 13, public hearing, housing element and general plan, ballot measure T implementation, zoning code amendments, ordinance introductions, with a presentation by Steve Golden, principal planner, and Zachary Dahl, director of community development. Welcome.
Hello again, Mayor and council members. I'm Steve Golden, principal planner in the planning division. I am going to be presenting this item tonight. It's always pauses. There we go. Okay, to give you a little bit of background on the San Mateo housing element, it was adopted in May 20th, 2024, and certified by the state on July 23rd, 2024. There are 5 goals to support compliance with state law and to achieve the city's regional housing needs. First is supporting production, preservation, protection, promotion, and affirming furthering fair housing. There are 53 policies in the housing element with 150 implementation actions, and a numerous number of these housing element policies and programs require zoning code amendments, and they are targeted for adoption in 2024 and 2025. So we're bundling a lot of those for you tonight. And then specifically policy H1.20 addresses the general plan implementation and measure T. You've heard a little bit about the San Mateo general plan tonight, but I wanted to just, for those people that are just looking or hearing this item online, the General Plan 2040 creates capacity for at least 10,000 new housing units, or sorry, the housing element has a policy H1.20 that states we should create capacity for at least 10,000 new housing units and increase the base density in the 10 study areas by at least 25 dwelling units per acre and height limits by at least 2 stories. And as you know, Measure T was passed by voters in November of 2024. Citywide, we increased capacity by nearly 20,000 units. The base densities in the general plan study area were increased by 50 to 80 units per acre, and height limits were increased by up to 3 stories. And just want to give you a brief overview of the zoning code amendments that were completed already in the housing element implementation. So in November of 2023, there were 2 initiatives. One, we amended the zoning code to allow residential projects with up to 25 units to be approved administratively. And the second one, which was adopting objective design standards for multifamily residential projects and mixed-use projects with a residential component. And then in July of last year, the council amended the zoning code to establish the by right designation. Those are housing sites that were reused from prior housing elements. They have to propose a minimum of 20% affordable units, and they have to be at least 30 units per acre. Okay, so before you tonight, we have zoning code amendments that fall into essentially 3 buckets. The first one is implementation of our housing element, the policies in the housing element, also in compliance with state law. The second bucket is coming back to you from the follow-up from council direction to potentially increase the administrative approval threshold for housing projects. And the third one is general plan and measure T consistency in the zoning code. So I'm going to give you a summary of the things in the zoning code amendments that are before you. We are kind of summarizing these. They are in more detail in attachment 3 in the agenda report. And we're also identified on these slides if the amendments were basically, or if they were based on housing element policy, and if there's any required state law and the California Government Code that we're also implementing. So we are proposing ordinance amendments to allow residential uses as a permitted use in commercial districts and office districts, addressing requirements for single room occupancies as required in the government code, eliminating the need for special use permits for multiple family housing in mixed use zoning districts. We're proposing to update and simplify the development standards for manufactured homes and removing any prohibitions, can I get that out? Removing any prohibitions of ADUs or accessory dwelling units in zoning districts where residential is a permitted use per state law. Also, we're cleaning up terminology in the zoning code related to housing and adding clarity to be consistent with state law, addressing group homes and residential care facilities, allowing farm worker housing within the agricultural district consistent with state law, and addressing requirements for emergency shelters, supportive housing, and low barrier navigation centers, and allowing them in certain zoning districts per state law and staff recommendations. Okay, so there's the second bucket of zoning code updates, which is council directed. Again, in November 2023, council directed staff to explore increasing the administrative approval threshold for projects consistent with the Objective Design Standards, or ODS. At that time, the council approved the threshold, they increased the threshold from 6 units to 25 units, and then asked staff to take a look at this and potentially increase it more. This past summer, we did do some research on that. We identified opportunities to increase the threshold. We included that information in the agenda report. And our proposal is to increase the threshold from 25 units to up to 50 units. And those would be projects that are consistent with Objective Design Standards. And then that would conversely update the Planning Commission's approval authority from the 26 units to 51 units or more. And then the third code amendment coming before you is to make changes to the existing zoning code relating to the implementation of Measure T and general plan consistency. There's a new section to incorporate the uses, densities, intensities, and heights specified in the land use element of the general plan, where they might conflict with the existing zoning code. And that's primarily being consistent with table LU1 in the general plan, and an excerpt of that is shown on the slide. And then the zoning code amendment would conform with provisions of the State Housing Crisis Act, or SB 330, where the zoning and general plan may have conflicts. So we took the amendments to the Planning Commission on February 11th. It should say 2025, sorry. February 11th of 2025, and they made the following recommendations. They recommended that the City Council make findings that the ordinances are exempt from further environmental review pursuant to CEQA based on section 15183. They recommended City Council adoption of an ordinance amending the zoning code to implement the housing element. They did make a change from the staff recommendation of 50 unit threshold for residential projects that are consistent with the Objective Design Standards up to 150 units. And then they also made an alternative recommendation to have no thresholds whatsoever for those projects that are consistent with ODS. And then they recommended council adoption of a second ordinance amending the existing sections of the zoning code relating to implementation of Measure T and general plan consistency. And so the items before you tonight, these are the recommendations. Basically what I explained in the last slide. Again, under bullet 2, there was a difference in what staff recommended and what the Planning Commission recommended. So the question before you is, should the increase be to, if you're going to increase it, should it be to 50 units, 150 units, or some other number that you would like to propose? So that completes my presentation, and I can answer any questions you might have.
Thank you for your presentation. Before we move on, can we open it to public comment? I don't think there's anyone in the audience. Is there anyone online?
If you're participating virtually and wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand now. I'll give you just a few moments to do so. We have one request to speak, Mayor Newsom, and that is 3 minutes per speaker. Our speaker will be Ken Abreu. Ken, please unmute your mic.
Thank you.
Okay, thank
Welcome.
you. Just wanted to say that, it's critical that we streamline the process for getting housing built. And I think that the recommendation by the Planning Commission to go to 150 units for administrative approval is one way of streamlining things. And the other thing is, I think we should look at trying to move the zoning code up to a little faster schedule, see if we can get that done within the next 6 months or so, rather than a couple of years. These are both things that would help get this housing built in a timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker will be Jeremy Levine. Jeremy, please unmute your mic.
Good evening, Council. Good to be speaking to you again. I hope you didn't miss me too much. Thank you again to staff for a presentation and for crafting 2 really thoughtful ordinances that make important progress implementing the city's housing element and moving forward with an interim ordinance for Measure T. I said in an ordinance, a letter earlier today, I'm not going to repeat everything in that letter. I just want to emphasize that the city staff are going to have a lot on their plate in the next few years. And that is because of the work the city has been doing to make housing possible. And so the council can take actions to lessen that workload, to make what city staff are focusing on the most important, essential things for the community. And so 2 ways that the council can do that will be streamlining ministerial approval, zoning administrator approval for a wider range of projects. That can mean that your staff will get to focus on big projects like the Hillsdale project, while the rules the city set can effectively govern smaller developments and allow them to move quickly through the process. The other way that the city can help save a lot of staff time is by asking staff to streamline the process for doing the comprehensive zoning update. And I know that item is not what's directly before you tonight, but the timeline for that comprehensive zoning update is described in the letter. And so I'm looking at the work your staff is going to have to do. I hope that you're looking at that work too and thinking about how we can use their time and resources most efficiently. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Newsom, that concludes public comment.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and open it up to questions from the council. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Council Member Sorko Kadiki.
I don't always go first. I just want to point that out.
No
Try
problem.
to share. So I just want to thank you again for a great presentation. I did note that staff mentioned that you guys have done a lot to expedite process by bundling 53 out of 150 actions. So thank you for that. That being said, with Measure T passing by a 60% majority, I think that shows the community at large has spoken that, they would like to see this implemented. And I would like us to move faster and be more efficient. Going back to earlier with item 11, I asked to pull up slide 9. So there's 21 projects. that were listed there. And actually 11 of the 21 in the housing element future pipeline projects are under 75 units. And so while I appreciate Lisa Nash's comments earlier about wanting a more holistic community perspective, I do think that we should, consider a discussion on, how we can change the second bullet, which is the threshold for residential projects or commercial projects, and increase that number just to help expedite and be more efficient, and also manage staff time, and the fact that it is costly and we are in a budget deficit right now. 150 may be too large of a number, but I would like to throw out 100 units and see how the council feels about that. So I guess I'll start there, and then obviously amending, city council adoption of an ordinance amending existing sections for Measure T makes sense. So
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilmember Diaz-Nash.
So we'll take the corners, right?
The bookends.
Exactly. So thank you very much. Thank you for all the work, for staying here, for helping us through. I think there's a lot of happiness here. There's a lot of hard work. Couple of questions, just for my own knowledge. In the SRO regulation or whatever, have we never had anything talking about SROs previously?
That's correct. This will be a new beginnings for the essentially for the division, and having a code to implement that.
Okay, because I think that's a great piece of progress. And then, where is the agricultural district where we're talking about farm worker housing? I mean, I understand the importance and support it, but I just don't know in San Mateo where it might be.
So I'll just say it's very limited, and probably unlikely to occur in the city of San Mateo. Nonetheless, it's something we have to do to be consistent with state law.
Okay.
I think there are 1 or 2 parcels that would fit into that.
Okay.
I believe the fairgrounds are the only ag designations that we have here in the city.
I thought it might have had something to do with all these people with their chickens in their backyards, that maybe you could expand it. But anyhow, thank you. That's good information. And where in, I know it's a comprehensive zoning. When will we be talking about minimum residential percentage in multi-use buildings?
Very soon. That is the next bundle that will be coming forward. We're currently working on drafting that language right now. It's building on the study session that we had last year. So basically, as soon as the housing team and the planning team got done with the housing element APRs and this bundle of code amendments, the next one coming down will include looking at minimum densities and mixed use. And so hopefully in the next couple months.
Great, because I think that's so important to all of this. Then I'm interested in how staff got to a recommendation of 50 units, and what was the process and the balancing between your efforts. Obviously, we want to streamline, but we also want to make sure this is viable. So
yeah, through the mayor. So we looked at projects that had been submitted in the last 5 years to the division for planning applications for land use entitlements. So it was based on those applications in conjunction with the recently adopted objective design standard, which has different groupings of development types based on the size. We'll call it the size of the project. So there's a grouping called mid-rise buildings, which are 4 to 7 stories in height, I believe. So we were looking at the number of units that those projects that were about the 50 unit projects were all coming into that range and that mid-rise building type. So that was our kind of comfort level in looking at increase in the threshold. Of course, Planning Commission had a slightly different perspective, but that's how we came to our 50 units.
Okay, thank you for that. I think I would, while I appreciate the desire to streamline and go as fast as we possibly can, given the fact that Measure T was a great success and everyone was involved, I think I'm more comfortable going with the 50 versus any higher at this time, because this is going to be a big change for the community. It's going to be a big change for everyone. And I think we have to, while we want to go as fast as we can, I think we need to walk before we run. And you hear me keep talking about impact on staff and what it's going to take, and that would be a whole nother area. And I think from a staffing perspective, I'm concerned if suddenly it went up to, this is what has to happen. But also from a community perspective, that it will be a change. And we have a lot of, I think, goodwill built up in the community because of Measure T, and people said I may not be wild, but I understand the need. So I would feel more comfortable keeping it at 50 right now. We can always come back later, but I think it's important from a community perspective to stay at 50. So but other than that, I'm in complete agreement with your recommendations.
Yes.
Through the mayor. And thank you, Lisa, for your comments. While I hear what you're saying, I do just want to call out, 60% of San Mateans voted for this. We also spent 6 years creating a general plan, getting community input. So, we're basically going back on every project and asking for additional community input, which is okay, but we also have to be realistic about implementing some of these changes at the same time. I think the other, thing that I would call out is going forward, it would be good to understand from planning, like what are, the costs for all this required staff time, consultant costs, for, schedule for public outreach, how much is going to be required then for each of these projects. Again, there's 21 right now. Effectively, we could take 11 through a faster process if we go with 100 and below. The other, piece of it that I'd like to understand is, can we get multiple options from planning on the rezoning process? Specifically, I know it says it's a 2-year process right now, but can that move any quicker?
Through the mayor. Yes, I think our desire is to move it through as expeditiously as possible. We are recognizing that there's a lot of work to do. I think our zoning code has over 400 pages. There's a lot of pieces, layers that we have to work through, make sure that we're updating appropriately. Our goal is to really kind of build a zoning code that can serve San Mateo for the next multiple decades. And this is a zoning code that has a lot of layers to it and has kind of evolved over time, never really holistically. We're wanting to look at it holistically. And so we've looked at 2 years as a likely time frame to get through it. We're absolutely open to moving as quickly as possible. And the RFP to bring on a consultant has been published, and our goal is to bring that contract to council in June. And then we'll build the schedule from there. We also are going to be looking at phases. There's thousands of parcels that will need to be redesignated. And so we'll probably have to, by that nature, do it in phases just so we can manage meetings appropriately. But I think that's really the devil's in the details, getting a consultant on board, looking at all aspects. And with your direction, we can provide more details in June. But yeah, we're happy to work as quickly as we can. And that's the estimate now as we dig into it.
Well, and I really do appreciate all the work you're doing. I know it's very complex, very difficult, but it is really 8 years in the making because, again, there was a 6-year community input process. And now we're extending, potentially 2 more years to get all of this work done. So, then adding more layers to that of staff time, consultant time, and then we're going to get more projects, we're just going to get further and further backlogged. And so I really want us to find ways to be creative to implement and move things faster. And so I'm really looking to the council, of course, on these larger projects, we want as much input as possible, but also for some of these smaller projects, maybe that threshold for zoning can be moved.
So I would just, I hear what you're saying, and I just want to make sure that it's really clear because we've heard it said, I think, a few times lately that the work on the zoning implementation is duplicative of what we've done on the general plan. And I think it's worth clarifying that the work on the zoning implementation is different than the work we did on the general plan. So the general plan was really about figuring out what kind of land uses could go where and the appetite for heights and densities and the elements within the general plan. While the zoning implementation is also going to speak not only to the finer details, not how many stories, but what is a story? How is it defined? And also process. So what kind of permits do people need? And how do you issue those permits? And what are the findings that go in to issuing those permits? And a lot of, Zach said the devil is in the details just for bringing on board and doing the work, but the work that goes in to all of those pieces in each chapter and each element of the zoning code itself. And Zach also mentioned that our zoning code has not been comprehensively updated in a really long time. And if you were in our departments listening to us, you'd hear us say a lot of times, our code is broken because it is broken.
Well, I appreciate that. At the same time, what makes, I'm sorry, but you know, you guys are experts in planning. Now we're getting into the minutia details. You're going to bring the public into that when they've had input at a higher level, strategic level already.
Sure, but I think what I'm getting at is not about the public fixing the things that are broken, but I think the point I'm trying to make is that the work we're doing on the zoning code implementation is not duplicative of the general plan work. It's something different, and we can do as much or as little outreach as council directs us to do. And as Zach mentioned, we can do it. We can go faster if you want us to, and some of that is up to you. But some of the process is going to take as long as it takes. But there is an element to it that is inherently different than what we did with the general plan.
And sorry, just adding one more piece to that, which is, and I think the amendments here tonight, where we're doing this interim implementation of Measure T, we're building a process where projects can continue to move forward as we work through the comprehensive zoning code update. So our objective is to not delay projects who are ready to move forward. And that's kind of what we're doing. Obviously, there's going to be a gray period as we update our zoning code to fully implement, and there'll be some implementation and some interpretation that'll need to be worked out. But the goal is that we don't want to slow projects in this interim. We want to build a zoning code that can withstand the test of time and serve the city moving forward. But also not hold up projects that want to go.
So if we update the zoning code, would that threshold change again in the future?
We could definitely bring that decision point back to council for further consideration. And if there's additional data you're interested in, we're building out our dashboard. So as projects move forward, I think that'll also provide more data points for council to consider.
Appreciate the point on more data points and Christina's comments. I still feel that we have so many exciting development projects coming. If there's a way to increase the threshold, we should discuss and explore that.
Through the mayor, I think I heard an earlier question that wasn't answered, which was sort of what is the effects on staff increasing the administrative threshold. And I also heard a public comment. I just want to make it clear that this is not a ministerial process because there's no public hearing. It's not administrative process. We still would do the same public notification. It increases the threshold only for projects that are consistent with the objective design standards. So a developer can choose to go a quicker process or not have the not have the planning commission hearing if they choose to follow our objective design standards. But projects that, even if you increase the threshold and they don't follow the objective design standards, it would go to a public hearing. The public hearing process is another forum for the public to provide input, but there'd be sort of those inherent changes.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead and then I'll go.
Thank you through the mayor. Thank you, Mr. Golden, for your presentation. I did just have a couple of questions myself. One about the projects that could fit within this administrative threshold that you were just discussing. I remember reading in the administrative report something about projects that don't have additional commercial associated with them. Could you maybe remind us whether this is for like all the projects we were looking at in the previous slide beyond a certain number of units, or what other considerations go into that, including ODS, which you mentioned?
Right. So projects that through the mayor, through the projects that would be excluded from this process, this administrative process, would be projects, mixed use projects that have more than 10,000 square feet of commercial. So that those would just be excluded and have to go to planning commission.
Thank you. And I did just I had a question or two about the rezoning timeline. We have had some discussion on it. So actually, maybe I don't have to ask these anymore. I think I'll withhold, but I will make some comments related to decision points before council. I just want to, I support Councilmember Svirko-Goditsky's idea about increasing the threshold somewhere in between the staff recommendation of 50 and the Planning Commission's recommendation of 150. I was also actually thinking 100 or 99, and I thought 99 might be a little bit interesting, just because I think then we're talking about 1 to 99 would be one class that could receive this administrative treatment, and then 100 or more, I just think is a little easy to communicate to the public, a little easier to remember. And I think it gives a good, I think it provides a visual perspective a little bit on, when we consider that our RHNA is 7,000, and we just saw our report on how much we've accomplished to date and how much more is to be done. And indeed, the pipeline projects that Councilwoman Svirko-Goditsky highlighted. To me, I think in my mind, part of the understanding that the community has brought forth in a decision such as Measure T is that we know we need to increase housing significantly in our city. And so I think it's okay to posit that in order to reach 7,000 in a timely manner, we are going to need to focus on bigger projects, and that like 100 or more units may still be considered a big project in the city of San Mateo, but 99 or fewer may not be quite the larger project that it used to seem. And indeed, especially relatively, as we see some bigger projects come our way, I'm hopeful that people can feel like that's a reasonable compromise to allow for us to focus on the really bigger projects that we know everyone's going to want to give input on and hear more about. And I just wanted to point out too that, and staff, please correct me if this is not the case, but I appreciate the statement about 50 allowing for kind of a consistent application of mid-rise ODS from the 25 we currently have, but we do have high-rise ODS, and so it seems to me that this increasing the number wouldn't necessarily preclude us from, or like the zoning administrator from being able to weigh in on these matters. Is that fair?
Through the mayor, I think, and I'll put up a slide that might help a little bit. So this is kind of, and this was included in our, so when we were looking, council approved the 25 units, and looking at the projects, 25 units were in that range of 4 to upwards of 4 stories or more. So you're already in that mid-rise size building. And then looking at the projects that were coming in up to 50 units, you still were in that mid-rise. So that's kind of like where the comfort level of staff was, to say, hey, you already approved 25, so go up to 50. But your question regarding 100 units, I mean, staff still is going to be reviewing the project against the ODS, making sure that everything is consistent. We would be taking in public comments via, written comments to the public, and those would all be considered by the zoning administrator before it's approved. As it stands right now, we just don't have a public hearing where somebody could come in a public forum to speak to the zoning administrator and have those comments heard. But we'd still take in those public comments and consider those before we approve the project.
Thank you. And that reminds me just to note that I appreciated the Planning Commission's discussion on this in their meeting. And, I do think what we're talking about when we talk about this is whether or not to include a public hearing like at the Planning Commission level as part of the overall outreach, notification, et cetera, that goes with these projects. And so, I think that based on, what we're looking at here, what we saw in the previous slide, and the belief that we will see more projects and more large projects. And, the other discussion sort of on bandwidth and maximizing our resources, I would support 99 or 100, but would be happy to hear what other council members think. And similarly, I would, I think on the rezoning timeline, I appreciate the discussion that's occurred so far. I believe I heard that in June with the RFP results, we may get an opportunity as council to consider ways we might be able to slightly reduce the timeline with regard to public outreach and public hearings that might be related to the process. And if so, I support that opportunity. I support the rezoning taking as long as it needs to take, but I do hope that it will, of course, result in a simpler, more streamlined code that more applicants will be able to interpret and use. Director Dahl made a comment earlier when we looked at the below market rate units that we're getting as a result of greater base density as an example. And I think similarly, I guess I'm hoping that our zoning code, when updated, will allow for more applicants to get more out of the code we have in our city, and hopefully more projects will pencil out without needing mastery of a number of different kinds of state laws or other bonuses. And I support looking at opportunities really just to help us focus on the biggest and most important projects and outreach opportunities in our city. Thank you.
Okay. Couple questions. When it comes to the zoning process or the rezoning process taking about 2 years, are we looking at the 12 locations, looking at where we have open permits now and prioritizing the 12 in the areas that have more permits pulled already? Or does it matter? I mean,
Well, yes, I think that would be a key priority, is understanding where is the biggest development interest. I think looking at our transit, our TOD areas, the El Camino corridor, what study areas are seeing the most interest in focusing on zoning code updates there first. I think a key priority that will happen at the very start of the process is establishing zone districts for those medium to and high designations. We don't have those in our zoning code currently, so that's a top priority. We're actually looking at ways to get that work going even before June. And so I think strategically, we're very clearly hearing you, and it's been our objective all along, is what are those key zoning code amendments that'll help facilitate, provide clarity, and do other things to keep the process moving and to realize what's in the general plan. And so we'll continue to do that. But yeah, I think that's absolutely part of what we'll look at as we start to roll these phases forward.
Sorry, can you clarify? You said 12 sites?
Well, there's 12 sites of Measure T, 12 study areas of Measure T.
Okay.
And so what I'm asking is like,
I just want to make
are we
sure
starting
we're on the
with,
same page.
are we doing all of them equally, or are we going, okay, we have in this area, we've already got 4 permits and 4, so we focus on the ones that have more urgency, which is, I think, what Zach said.
And just to clarify, there are 10 study areas in the general plan.
Where am I reading?
There was 12 sites.
Oh, I'm reading 12 off of,
amendments.
yeah, sorry. 10, magic number. The other question is trying to get to this number that, so you guys are, how set are you on 50? Like, and when I look at this, I think 100's too high. And then I look at the numbers just right here and I look and realize, like, well, even if we had it at 100, that doesn't change from, say, 75. So there's 4 projects out of 12 here that are under 50. There are 7 that are under 75, and then it wouldn't matter because I don't think the next lowest denomination goes up until 125. So I'm wondering, could we do a little more and still not have you guys be uncomfortable with it? Meaning, would 75 be a number that, would be triple what we have currently? We'd be going from 25 to 75, but it wouldn't be that huge jump that people are asking about 150.
I think staff is comfortable with working with whatever council wants to see in terms of that threshold. We can make that work. And so I think it's really, it's a policy decision. Where do you feel is appropriate right now? Whether it's 50, 75, 99, 150, that's definitely workable. I think you can see in the range of projects here, you've kind of about a midpoint is about that 75. So 75, 99 might then get a larger group that can move through administratively. It's also key to note objective design standards consistency. So those smaller projects might still have to go to Planning Commission if they're seeking waivers from our objective design standards. So so that might be also an incentive for projects to fully comply with our ODS if they're seeing a faster process to get through planning. So I think that staff is willing to support wherever you want to see it. We'll definitely make it work.
I guess my other question, and when I look at this, I was kind of surprised to see how many of these are over 100 and, comparatively like only 70 or under 75. So that's, that's a little more than half. But do you think that we are going to see a flip at some point where, at a certain point we run out of large spaces? So do you think at some point we'll see a trend where that number is more like 50 or 75? Or do you think we'll, for a while anyways, still see some pretty substantial projects?
I think if we look at the 7 SB 330 projects we're seeing the full range. We've got, I think, a low at 28, and then obviously all the way up to the Hillsdale proposal or Concar projects at the high end. So my guess would be we're going to continue to see a range of projects because a lot of it's the site, the location. Sometimes we're going to see lower density projects. I think Bayshore Corporate Commons, it's a large site, but they're doing townhomes, so it's low density. So my guess is you've got a lot of pent up demand. So the first year or so are sites that, as we were going through the general plan, I talked to property owners that were sitting on the sidelines. They wanted to see the outcome, but they were interested in doing something with their property. This now gives them more opportunity. So I think wherever the threshold is, there might be some motivation for projects. If they're maybe thinking 100, maybe they drop it to 98 if they see an administrative path, or who knows, there'll be different factors. But I think the long and the short is we'll probably continue to see a range of project sizes for the next few years.
Just out of curiosity, on the project you just mentioned, the Bayshore Commons, how many units is that proposed for condos?
I believe it's 260.
Okay, so significantly enough over that it would.
Yeah, so there, I mean, because it's a 14-acre site, and in that case, and I think there was also a note about the mix of for sale and for rent. And actually, with the 7 SB 330s, we're seeing a nice mix of both. Actually, it's not heavily skewed one way or the other.
Okay. I don't think I have any other questions. Does anyone else have anything else to add?
I could come up to 75. I mean,
I guess I should have circled back to. Does anyone else hear? Do I hear 75? Does anyone else?
No, I mean, I totally get the impetus and why. I'm just want to make sure we don't say, okay, we got 60%, so therefore everything's hunky dory, go to town. So I'd be totally open to, coming back after whatever period of time. I don't know that you can put a time on it and say, we should say, how is this going? Because
I would assume we would be doing that, right? Like, so if whether we decide 75, 99, or 100, at what point do we bring this back to see how it's going?
Why I think we'll be coming back to you a lot in the coming years with code amendments. So
Sure.
there'll be any number of points where if you wanted to check in or ask us, and we'll be at the ready. And then if you wanted to, we could throw it into the next bundle.
We just have it be a council
over
direction
the next
of-
couple of years, there'll be a lot of opportunity to relook at that if you want to.
And we can change it too, right? So if we say 75 tonight, then in 6 months, if we hear the results are good or bad, we can be flexible. No? Is that a no?
Can we pull up slide 9 of the housing element future pipeline, please? Sure, no problem. I just want to call out because it's interesting because like Monte Diablo is at 75. So would the threshold be 75 and above or 75 and below? You also have Block 20 at 72 and Bespoke at 71. So there's 11 projects there.
Yeah, sure, but it would be the same if it was 99 or 100. I mean,
Yeah.
whatever the number is what the number is.
I know, but we should be driving for efficiency.
To the mayor, not to
Yeah,
add
sure, go ahead.
humor to this, but I kind of feel like too, like there's a disclaimer, like past projects don't predict like future applications. So
yeah.
we
Sure.
showed you the last slide, which was the last 5 years, but things change in the market, and like I don't know, that kind of disclaimer of we're somewhat I don't know if arbitrarily picking a number, but pick your number, and like Zach said, we'll go with it and we can report back.
Okay, well, 75 or less is what my number is. Does anyone else like 75 or less? I think I got one. Do I have no?
I think I like the idea of 99.
99 or less?
Again, this can be revisited.
Well, that's why I'm going lower with the idea that it's closer to where staff started. I mean,
I think we have 3 for 99.
we do have 3 for 99.
Yeah.
Well, if we have 3, do we have 3 for 99?
You have
Okay.
3 for 99.
Then we can do 99.
To the mayor,
Yes.
if I may, so I would suggest voting on the two
Oh,
ordinances separately.
Okay.
Even though there are two ordinances listed, I would suggest voting on the lengthier bundle of zoning code changes to implement the housing element, which includes this threshold. Voting on that one first, and then handling the Measure T.
I don't
implementation
see
ordinance.
on these ordinance where it's telling me the number though. So I've got, what I have to read back has 2 ordinances listed 1 and 2, but doesn't specify the number that I'm seeing unless.
Ordinance 1 includes the administrative threshold, so we could maybe do a sub-resolution that just speaks to the administrative threshold, or does that?
No, I think the attachment 1 has the threshold that's subject to the current discussion. And on page 6 of the PDF is where the zoning administrator threshold is listed. So what I'm suggesting is that the council votes on attachment 1 to the staff report, which is the lengthier ordinance. You can decide what the threshold is and then turn your attention to the other ordinance
Okay.
that's
so-
listed in this agenda.
I think attachment 2 is the Measure T.
That's correct.
Okay, so if I were to read this, I would read 1 and say with a housing threshold element of 99 or less. Okay, so let me take a stab at reading it. So I'm going to start with introducing a single ordinance instead of two that amends the San Mateo Municipal Code Title 27 zoning to implement various various programs and policies established in San Mateo's 2023 to 2031 housing element with a set standard of 99 or less. Is that right? I'm hearing commotion, but I don't know if I'm.
No, that captures the intent of the council.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, I thought it was getting like, we are going down the, okay. So at 99 or less, do I hear a motion or a second? Someone's got to make a motion.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All right, take roll, please.
Deputy Mayor Lorraine,
Yes.
Councilmember Fernandez.
Yes.
Councilmember Diaz-Nash,
Yes.
Councilmember Svirko-Goditsky,
Yes.
Mayor Newsom.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, and for our second ordinance, to amend the San Mateo Municipal Code Title 27 zoning to implement General Plan 2040 Ballot Measure T approved by the voters on November 5th, 2024, and find that the ordinances are exempt from further environmental review pursuant to CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, Section 15183, projects consistent with community plan and general plan or zoning, and take it away.
I was just actually moving it because I'm short. I motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. I would ask you to please take roll.
Councilmember Svirko-Goditsky,
Yes.
Councilmember Diaz-Nash,
Yes.
Councilmember Fernandez.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Lorraine,
Yes.
and Mayor Newsom.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Fantastic. We now will move on to reports and announcements. Who has reports and announcements? No. Who has reports and announcements? You get to go second. Second.
Today.
You have, but
I'm
yeah, I'll
just
go
teasing.
first this time.
I shouldn't let her go either. I should be like, why don't you guys?
Right. Okay. Well, that's what happens when you're far away. I just have one. I wanted to report to the community that Head West is back in town. Our market on B Street Pedestrian Mall yesterday. It's the third Sunday of every month from 11 to 4. And on a gray, sort of grizzly day, it was packed. There were all sorts of sellers, all sorts of people, and people were going in and going to the restaurants after they went and bought things, and there was just a wonderful feeling. So I just encourage everyone every third Sunday from now through the end of the year, check out Head West, and San Mateo is going places.
Councilmember Svirko-Goditsky. Please.
It's my turn.
It's your
Great.
turn. And I also support what you're about to say.
Thank you so much.
As do I.
Earlier today, Mike Swire made a public comment about the 10192 connector project. It's very important for everyone in San Mateo. It's a state project. And on April 7th, they are coming to present, correct?
At 5:30 p.m. here.
Perfect. 5:30 p.m. So if you'd like to have a public comment about the impacts of the 10192 connector, that's your time, April 7th, 5:30 p.m.
Question, does anyone know why they're so my understanding initially was that this was all on the east side of the freeway, but they're referring to it as the Fiesta Gardens. Is there an impact on the west side as well that we know? And
On the west side, I believe our Washington Park is included. Or no, on the west side, you mean I'm talking about the east side. On the west side, I'd have to check to see exactly. I don't have the details specifically, but that's why we're going to get the update on the 7th. I know that there also is a short-term 10192 project currently coming up as well. And so we're going to get more information out. We just received from Caltrans as well, which is separate and apart from this bigger project that the council's talking about.
And I will be very happy to take all of our feedback back to CCAG because I am our representative.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Lisa. Rob, so if you look at the second phase of the project, which includes the eminent domain of Washington Park and 33 homes on Adams Street on the east side, there is also kind of an expanded map of new freeway on-ramps that potentially could impact Lakeshore, Fiesta Gardens, et cetera, in addition to the 101 northbound through the east side. But that is where we need more clarity.
Yeah,
So
for
that
sure.
will definitely be one of the things to bring up.
And whatever that impact is, we should make sure that the school district is informed because they also should be bringing out their constituents for it. Okay.
Sorry, on that topic, I would, obviously we have the study session next week or whenever.
2 weeks.
But I would also put into our brains, maybe writing a letter to our state legislators because it's a Caltrans and they are the ones who appropriate money for these kinds of projects sometimes. And so I think if we have an opinion as a council on this project after the presentation, we should consider that.
I think that's a great idea.
I'm full of great ideas.
Yes, you are. Do you have any other reports or announcements you'd like to make?
I do. I just wanted to say that I was loved going on a tour of a little hidden gem in my district, which was the Worker Resource Center, with City Manager Kajikian and members of our housing team. I'd actually never been there before, and it was amazing to see a space that was catered to our day workers in the community, and they are always looking for. They are a great place if you have time, if you're a person who has hours to give back. I would definitely encourage you to check out the Samaritan House Worker Resource Center. And in full disclosure, I'm a board member there as well, and they're having a gala on Friday as well.
Also a great resource if you need help around your house. You know, I've gone there and had people that are, you know, plumbers from where they came from and had them help me install sprinklers and do that type of, you know, handyman work. And so it's a great resource. I've also had feedback along those lines, which is that since it moved from its old location to where it is now, we have a lot more people that don't, that use the street instead. And so, you know, I know this has been brought up, but anything we can do to help try to get those people into using the service would be great.
That was a topic that came up with our housing staff and with City Manager Kajikian and the staff there at the Worker Resource Center. And I know that it will be a continuing topic of discussion.
Absolutely. And that is really between our districts. So let's work together on it. Okay. Adam, Deputy Mayor Lorraine.
Thank you. I have one quick one. I just wanted to report that I had the great fortune to represent the city of San Mateo at a building electrification summit with the California Energy Commission and along with our sustainability coordinator, Andrea Chow. I want to thank her for being there with me, and she helped me prepare for a session that I got to speak at, in which I got to highlight Electrify San Mateo and other work our city has been doing as a local city that was highlighted alongside the city of Sacramento and Los Angeles at a summit that was packed with awesome information. It also helped, by the way, that we had our community meeting for Electrify San Mateo the week before. I appreciated being able to attend that and get some feedback from the community and, refresh my command of what the council had agreed to begin exploring in the previous year so that I could share it at the summit. So very cool. Proud to be a Californian and to know that there's a lot of great work still happening here to make buildings healthier and more sustainable. And I'm excited that San Mateo is part of those who are leading the way.
Okay, I had a lot of public input. Thank you, Adam. I had a lot of public input tonight about the parking situation in Bay Meadows. The city manager and I have already been talking about it, but what I'll be working on is getting a meeting with them sometime in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Alex, if you could send some staff along with me, that'd be great. I'd also like us to get creative on a few things, like what we've talked about, which is, for example, if we could have some sort of a permit for people who are working, like labor, some sort of a labor permit specifically. And then we should be following up with the locations to make sure that they're providing parking. For example, Rome Burgers was one that was brought up that the staff aren't given parking. But yeah, there's it's a really interesting conundrum in that, it's a transit orientated area, and it's built around that, and people know that when they move there. But we've gone 5 years without having any enforcement, and now that we do, we have challenges. And I think we can find some compromises that we can maybe offer that are not expensive, and I think we could also find if there are things that are costing, maybe we could pass that on if there's interest there. But anybody have anything to add about that?
I'm happy to just give a little background to the issue at hand. So this is regarding the parking in Bay Meadows, which is a transit-oriented development. It came to be and approved by the city council as a transit-oriented development, so limited on parking for the entire project. The parking management plan was developed with traffic engineers on behalf of the developer for the project back in the day, and that was approved by the council. And I believe it's part of the disclosures as well if someone purchases a home over there. Back in the beginning of the pandemic, we're going back 5 years now, the city manager at the time, Drew Corbett, went ahead and relaxed multiple areas of the city, across the city, parking restrictions overall. And so this is the last neighborhood that has not gone back to what the parking requirements were citywide. And so understanding that, staff has been in contact with individuals from the neighborhood. They have laid out in an email exactly what the steps would be if they wanted to go ahead and change the parking restrictions at the site. And that includes having an updated parking management plan conducted by a traffic engineer. And they'd have to submit a planning application, and that would be the HOA over there in order to start the process. And then it would go through city staff's review, and then potentially all the way up. It could either be done at the city staff level if everything checks out okay as part of the parking management plan after the review, or it might have to go to the planning commission. There is a process. We have sent over that information. Staff is willing to work with whoever is there to spearhead, if it's the HOA or whichever group, or if it's the developer themselves. Happy to have further discussions. We're, of course, make ourselves available, Mayor, to have both Public Works and community development staff be on hand to have a community meeting. Additionally, notification was done more than 6 months in advance to the neighborhood to let them know of the upcoming parking restrictions. So that was completed. But understanding that this does potentially cause issues for some of the residents, some subsets. We've also heard from residents that appreciate having the parking restrictions as well. So of course we hear more from the residents who have had issues and the burdens that it creates. But there is also a subset out there in that neighborhood who appreciate the transit-oriented development out there as well.
Yes.
So with that, we're here to engage and have a dialogue, and also be able to share what the process would be to go about having those parking restrictions refined further. There's also certain limits, I believe, that can happen at the Public Works Director level, potentially on, I believe right now it's at a 2-hour restriction. There might be up to 4 hours. There sure is some wiggle room there that can help with some relief. We are, as a city, required to follow what the legal requirements are with all our projects throughout the city. And so that's something that we were just restoring the parking to follow what was approved by the city for that development to occur. If not, there would have to be other changes. That development would not have been developed the way that it is today. If there weren't those restrictions, but we need to study that further. So I guess that's my long-winded way of saying we're here to engage and be able to talk to the neighborhood and, shine a light on what the process would be if they wanted to change those restrictions. And so happy to provide staff as you go out there and engage with that neighborhood, hopefully in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Just let me know the date and time and place.
I'm thinking we'll use the police station's community room, or we'll see if we can get somebody in Bay Meadows to let us use one of their community rooms.
No, that's totally fine. The police.
Do we have access to? We'll do this offline. Do we have access to some of the community rooms in Bay Meadows that are?
I'd have to go and check out. I just know that the quickest and
easiest would probably be use the police station.
Is the police station. Yeah. And so you just let me know the date and make sure that we have the availability, and then we'll make sure that we have staff in the facility ready to go to engage with the residents out there
Okay.
about next
fantastic.
steps. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes? What?
You're going to say something, St. Patrick's Day?
Say something St. Patrick's Day-ish?
Say something Irish.
I will defer to our Irish city clerk. Do you have any wisdom for this great St. Patrick's Day 2025, which experienced the St. Patrick's Day shake out of Dublin, California?
Aaron Gobra.
Aaron Gobra. And with that, we will adjourn. Aaron Gobra. Done for 10.
Or 10. Look how efficient we are. Hella efficient. Martin, the ruler made all the difference.
So
Thank
no
you.
one-
I love that ruler. I'm gonna fight anybody who wants the ruler.